Welcome to ScoreCraft, the Barrens. In life, it is the bonds of shared experience that most tightly bind us together into friendships, into families, and into war bands. Each fledgling member of the Horde, be they a yet untested orcish grunt desperate to prove his strength and honour, or a greenhorn Tauren brave on their first hunt for game beyond the plains of Mulgore. Perhaps a young Darkspear looking to add some quillbore to their collection of shrunken heads, or even an envoy of the Forsaken, far from their usual haunts, and enduring the company of his allies as his Dark Lady's orders demand. Whatever their reasons for making the pilgrimage to the Barrens, all members of the Horde one day walk this well-worn trail, though not all make the return trip. It is a land of great trials, its soil dry and cracking like eggshells of earth. Its challenge laid bare to us by the bones of fallen beasts that lie where they fell, bleached by the formidable desert sun and picked clean by the scavengers that abound here. All paths across Kalimdor lead, eventually, to the crossroads, and so this bustling settlement has grown to be a hallmark of the Horde experience. Here, many adventurers first had their skills truly tested, venturing out into the arid plains and braving the elements to hunt game that otherwise might have hunted them. So too did we thwart the exploits of the Venture Company, vanquish legions of the Quillbore menace, and even investigate the druidic mysteries of the Barrens' oases. A brave few even daring to step foot into the dark and labyrinthine Wailing Caverns. But more than any of these hardships, the enduring legacy of the Barrens is one of kinship and bonding. Here, the four races of the Horde often came face to face with one another for the first time. They shared these trials together, and through the struggle formed bonds that would see them through the rest of their journeys in Azeroth. We came to this vast sea of savannah as wayward novices, and left it with the spirit of the Horde coursing hot through our veins. However, the unforgettable signature melody of the Barrens, played on a basset horn, the more mellow, richer, and lower cousin of the common B-flat clarinet, is perhaps the least patriotic of all the Horde soundtracks. I was staggered to discover that, in fact, its opening is based on the same melodic elements as can be found in Elwyn Forest and Duskwood. In previous episodes, I talk about these two zones and their relationship to one another being reflected in their musical tapestries. Initially surprising to be sure, but an obvious choice after some reflection on the historical link between the two forests. The fact that these melodies base themselves on the same snippet of melody as the Barrens is another thing altogether. You can see here that the pattern of a rising fourth followed by two falling notes with exactly the same intervals used, is the initial motif of both of these themes, Duskwood just being a modified version of the Elwyn theme, and they quickly divert away from this similarity, but it still lies at the heart of them both, an exceedingly curious and surprising choice by our composers. However, I think it can be best understood through a visual approach. The shape of this motif as a jump upwards to the home note, symbolic of the beginning of a player's journey, and then a further leap upwards, followed by a fall of one step down. I see this as a musical sketching of a new player enthusiastically leaping from the mundane world of everyday life into their first steps as a beginner player. They then leap forwards again, daring to take on all challenges and become the hero of their dreams, followed by a step backwards as they are met by the hardships of their journey, obstacles on the road to glory. And so we see this musical representation of the experience of a new player, the gameplay loop of enthusiasm, adversity, and eventually triumph. That is the true fuel driving our passions forward as adventurers. Since this motif is used by starting zones for both factions, it is owned by neither. Just a very subtle gesture by Jason Hayes and his team to remind us that though we come from very different worlds, the heroes of the Horde and Alliance both share the same intrepid spirit of adventure. Another genius musical portrayal of the Barrens' experience is through the use of call and response between various instruments. Call and response is a musical form as simple as it is ancient, and lies at the heart of almost all musical traditions. Here, it strikes me as a representation of that most infamous experience of the Barrens, the general chat. The call first comes from the trumpet, and it rises up in a questioning intonation, much as a new player might ask about the whereabouts of Mrs. Mencrick. It then repeats the same phrase, just changing the final 2 notes to resolve downwards, implying a sense of resolution, much like the full stop ending a sentence. This is immediately answered by a bassoon in a mocking tone, mimicking the response to most questions posed to the Barrens chat. It uses a fragment of the trumpet melody, and a little ornamentation known as a lower auxiliary note, and adds to it a clashing D-flat that jauntily sticks out of the texture. This out-of-key note is followed by a G, an interval of a tritone, the most clashing interval possible and often used in warning signals. Here it's attached to the trumpet's melody either as a comical derision, or, perhaps more likely, as a sage warning to our rookie trumpeter to take care as he explores these barren plains. Everything here is young and hungry, and wide-eyed adventurers would do well to remember that. Truly, the music of the Barrens captures the essence of call and response. It's often prevalent in folk music, where it helps to unite a small community by them coming together in song, dance, and often worship. The Barrens isn't entirely reliant on call and response, however, merely using it as an influence to help create through sound a sense of the endlessly rolling plains of the Barrens and the sparse dotting of players around this arid landscape, all calling out to one another, trying to find a friendly face and companion to brave the elements with together. The call and response style of each instrument making a statement, pausing, and then another instrument ringing out an answer is a genius way to capture the reality of gameplay and the player experience of this zone purely through compositional technique. With the fall of night, we hear a long, sustained drone of a C in the bass strings, above which the rest of the string section play a doleful, natural minor melody in octaves. Each low in their registers and rumbling over the plains in a troubled melody, unsure, tossing and turning, just as we do in our sweat-soaked bedsheets, as even the night brings no respite from the scorched, baking earth of the Barrens. Another excerpt of the soundtrack conjures the oppressive experience of a long trek across the Barrens by day. It starts with a small shaker imitating a rattlesnake panned quickly from left to right, creating with sound alone the fear of a snake sneaking around behind the player. This is coupled with a lethargic, sickly oboe melody. It repeats twice in 9/8 suspension, lingering 1 note above the home note before resolving down, weak and defeated. This creates a sense of heat-induced stupor, the writhing of a starved gazelle in its death throes. We also hear a beater striking a wooden block off in the distance. It has a very dry sound to it, echoing the dry, brittle bones that litter the savannah. These weathered carcasses warn us of our fates should we become complacent and too convinced of our newfound strength, fledglings as we yet are. There is also a plucked ostinato circling round and around underneath this theme, like the Ouroboros serpent eating its own tail. It again unsettles the listener, perhaps another ill omen? Its circular pattern hinting at the circle of life, all too bleakly familiar on these bloodied plains. Just as the Barren seems to roll on, uninterrupted forever, so too do these musical fragments seamlessly flow into one another as a patchwork cloth billowing in the desert winds. Ever are these lands alive with the bustle of young adventurers, these melodies passed down from hand to hand, immortal and unmoving as the mighty mountains that crown this great savannah. These melodies are older almost than the land itself, and though their origins are lost in the sands of time, they live on in our hearts. Hearts emboldened by the trials and training we met here, and hearts that beat the hot blood red of the Horde. Once we emerge from these ochre steppes, battle-hardened and wizened from our exploits, we finally understand what it means to be a true son of the Horde, with 2 words etched indelibly onto our souls. Loktar Ogar. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, subscribe, and share it with any friends you think would like it too. If you'd like to support the channel, you can find links to my Patreon and PayPal in the description below. These videos take a lot of time and hard work to make, but one day I hope to be able to do this full time for you, and explore with you the great musics that games have brought to the world. You can also find a link to my Twitch channel in the description. I look forward to seeing more of you friendly folks around in the chat there, but until then, I'll see you in the next one. Stay chim, everyone.